Fern lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. Her thighs still hurt a lot. Her eyes were still wet from crying. Pinkie Pie got out of bed and headed to the door. She turned to Fern. "Can I trust you to be alone while I go out?" asked Pinkie. Fern nodded. "Good, because if you don't, I'll nail you to the wall." Pinkie smiled and left. She headed to the back through the back hall and stood outside. She looked around and found a clothing store. She used the shadows to stealthily make her way to the store, and the store was just closing. The only pony in there was a yellow unicorn with blue hair. She looked like she was tidying up to go home, unless she lived in her store, like Fern. Pinkie opened the door and walked in. "I'm sorry," said the unicorn. "We're closing up for the night." "That's all right," said Pinkie. "I won't be that long." "Well," said the unicorn, "you can look around while I finish up." "Thanks a bunch," said Pinkie. She trotted over to the shelf and looked at the different outfits. The unicorn went back to tidying up. She then remembered something. A royal guard came in earlier asking about a pony that sounded just like the one in her store. Pink with balloons as a cutie mark. She turned around to see where she was, but she was gone. She took a couple cups back against the wall, passing a clothing stand. As she passed one, a hoof shot out and pinned her against the wall. "Hiya," said Pinkie. "You," said the unicorn. You're the pony the guards are looking for." "You bet," said Pinkie. "What's your name?" Macy," said the unicorn. "My name's Macy." "Hi, Macy," said Pinkie Pie. "Are you going to kill me?" asked Macy. "That's just what Fern said." "You know Fern?" asked Macy. "Is she—" "She's still alive," said Pinkie. "And she'll stay that way as long as you keep your mouth shut. Tell no pony who I am, 'cause if you do, I won't just kill Fern. Oh, no. I'll tear her apart, spread her organs all over town." Macy's eyes enlarged with fright. "And then I'll come and do the same thing to you. Got it?" Macy nodded. "Good. Now," said Pinkie, holding up a trench coat and a matching hat. "How much is this?" "Take it," said Macy. "Just take it." Pinkie Pie lowered the outfit. "That's awfully generous of you," she said. "It's a gift." Pinkie put on the outfit. "It fits perfectly," said Pinkie, checking herself out. She looked back at Macy. "Now no pony will know who I am, right?" Macy nodded. Pinkie Pie backed away from Macy. "Well, I'll be seeing you again, I'm sure." Pinkie Pie left the shop and headed back to the post office. She entered through the back and headed back into the bedroom. She saw Fern still in bed. "Good girl," she said. "Some pony's learning." Macy left the shop, trembling, and made her way to the post office. She levitated a key of the door's lock and unlocked it. She put the key back in the bag she was carrying. She opened the door and stepped into the lobby. She closed the door behind her and made her way to the lounge door. Just then, something pinned her against the front desk. "What are you doing here?" asked Pinkie Pie. "I just wanted to check on Fern," said Macy. Pinkie Pie thought for a second, then let Macy go. "Don't get cute," said Pinkie, watching Macy enter the lounge. Macy then found the opened bedroom door and went in. "Fern?" she asked. "Who?" started Fern. She opened her eyes and looked. "Macy?" "Hey, girl. What are you doing here?" she asked. "You have to go." "It's okay," said Macy. "I know about the situation. She came to me as well." "Oh, no," said Fern. "It's all right," said Macy. "We just have to do what she says, and she won't hurt us." She spotted on the wound on Fern's thigh. "What happened?" "I tried to escape," Fern said, "but she caught me." She started to cry. "I just want her to leave me alone." Macy put a hoof on Fern's head. There. Just hang in there. Can't you do something? Asked Fern. Macy shook her head. If I try anything, she'll kill you. Then me. Fern started to cry harder, and Macy gave her a hug. We'll get through this, said Macy. Together. There was a knock on the door, and Macy let go of Fern and looked around. Time's up, said Pinkie. Macy took one last look at Fern and left the room. Pinkie Pie followed her out, as Macy got to the door that led to the lobby, and then turned around. Let her go, said Macy. You can have me. Just let her go. Pinkie let out an evil chuckle. That's noble, she said. Is she your friend? Macy nodded. You're willing to risk your life for your friend. I respect that. But I can't. Why not? Asked Macy. The situation's too perfect, said Pinkie. This place has a bedroom and, from the looks of things, a basement. Oh, said Macy, lowering her head. But you can visit her any time you want, said Pinkie. Macy raised her head to look at Pinkie. On one condition. What? You honor my previous terms, as well as one more, and we have a deal. What's the extra term? If you come over, and if I need anything done, you do it. No questions asked. Macy inhaled deeply. Deal, she said. Great, said Pinkie. Macy headed through the lobby to the front door. Remember this, girl, she said. I'm letting you go wherever you want. Don't abuse this privilege. Macy nodded and left. The next morning, Fern limped out of the bedroom and into the lounge. Pinkie was sitting at the table on the opposite side. Have a seat, she said. Fern slowly pulled out a chair and sat down. Don't seem so tense, said Pinkie. Loosen up. How can I loosen up? Asked Fern. You stabbed me in the thigh. Said Pinkie, tilting her head slightly and grinning. Does this place have a basement? Of course, said Fern. It's where I keep all the supplies that come in. Why? Just curious, said Pinkie. What are you thinking of doing? I was just thinking of making a den for myself. A den? Asked Fern. Like an animal? A place I can eat and not worry about making a mess. Said Fern. A mess? Pinkie Pie smiled. You bet. A big mess. You don't mean... Fern stated. Pinkie continued to smile. Oh, I think I'm going to be sick. Just then there was a knock on the front door. Oh, said Pinkie Pie. My first customer. Excuse me? Asked Fern. Show this visitor to your basement, will you? Why? So you can kill the pony? Of course, said Pinkie. I'm not going to do it. What did you say? She asked. Pinkie's eyes narrowed and her smile faded. I said I won't help you kill any pony. Pinkie Pie lunged forward, slamming Fern's head against the table and holding it down. Listen to me, you little worm, said Pinkie. You will do what I say, when I say it. Got it? 'Cause if you don't, so help me, I will rip out your organs with my teeth and feast on your eyeballs. Do I make myself clear? Perfectly, said Fern. Pinkie released Fern's head. I'll be in the basement, said Pinkie, walking off. Fern took a deep breath and headed to the front door. She opened it and saw a red unicorn standing there. Delivery, she said. Fern looked behind her and saw a cart with supplies. Fern took a deep breath. Right this way, said Fern, shakily. The unicorn levitated the cart and followed Fern to the lounge. The basement's at the end of the hall, said Fern. You can set the cart down there. Are you okay? Asked the unicorn. I'm fine, said Fern. Just a little tired. All right, then, said the unicorn, heading down to the basement. Fern sat down at the table in the lounge as the unicorn headed downstairs. The unicorn got to the bottom of the stairs and stood in the basement. She headed over to a shelf and started to stock the supplies. Said a voice. The unicorn whipped around and saw a pink pony with long, straight hair that fell over her face. Don't you look delicious? The unicorn let out a gasp as Pinky lunged at her throat. Fern laid her head down on the table and just listened to the screams of pain coming from the basement. She started to cry heavily and uncontrollably. I'm so sorry, she cried. Forgive me. She continued crying until the screams faded a few minutes later. A few more minutes later, she headed down the stairs. She stood in the basement and almost threw up. There was blood all over the floor. In the center of the blood puddle was what was left of the unicorn. Fern heard a noise to the right and looked to see what it was. Pinkie Pie stood next to the unicorn's mutilated body. She was covered in blood from head to hoof. That was wonderful. I think I'm going to be sick, said Fern. Pinkie Pie approached Fern and stood in front of her. She leaned in close, and Fern looked away. She didn't want to look at Pinkie's blood-covered face. Look at me, said Pinkie, calmly. Fern slowly looked at Pinkie's face, and Pinkie smiled. You did good. Pinkie took one last look at Fern before heading back upstairs. Fern looked at the mutilated body. I'm so sorry, she said softly. A tear fell from her eye as she turned to leave. Fern returned to her seat at the table. She laid her head down on the table inside. What's the matter with you? Asked Pinkie, sitting down across from her. Fern looked up to see that Pinkie still had blood on her face. I think you missed a spot, said Fern. Pinkie rubbed her face with one of her front legs and licked the blood off. She was innocent. Pinkie stopped licking and lowered her hoof. Innocent? Asked Pinkie. Innocent? You think innocence or guilt determines who I eat? She was just doing her job, said Fern. She was no threat to you. Look, Fern, said Pinkie, narrowing her eyes. I don't care if it's a mother with 3 fillies. If I'm hungry, I'll eat her. And if you even think about deceiving me, I'll eat you, too. I know, said Fern. We already discussed this. So we did, said Pinkie. Well, I think I'll just pay our friend Macy a little visit. Pinkie raised her head. What? Oh, don't worry, said Pinkie Pie, getting up out of the chair. I'm just going to say hello. Pinkie slipped off into the coat she got at Macy's and headed for the door. Before leaving, she turned to Fern. You'd better be here when I get back, said Pinkie. Or Macy'll pay. I'll be here, said Fern. Pinkie smiled. Good girl, she said, leaving. Pinkie headed for Macy's, and no pony knew her due to her coat. She entered the store and headed to the counter where Macy was. She was talking to a customer on the left side of the counter, while Pinkie stood on the right. You're all set, said Macy. The customer smiled and took the bag of clothes. When he left, Pinkie approached the counter. Have a nice day, said Macy, saying it loud enough for the customer to hear. She levitated a rag and spray bottle out to clean up the top of the counter. Pinkie stood in front of her. Need help with something? Asked Macy, not taking her eyes off the rag. It's impolite not to look at some pony when you're talking to them, said Pinkie. Macy stopped cleaning and stood in one place, not moving. She recognized the voice. She slowly looked up, and when she saw who it was, she dropped the rag and spray bottle. Shh, said Pinkie. What do you want? I'm just saying hi, said Pinkie. Oh, said Macy. levitating the rag and bottle and placing them on the counter. Hi. Nobody knows I'm here, do they? Asked Pinky. No, said Macy. You're not lying to me, are you? Of course not, said Macy. Pinky smiled. Great. How's Fern? Asked Macy. She's doing fine, answered Pinky. Still alive, for the time being. That's good, said Macy. Why don't you come over? I'm sure she'd love to see you. I'll do that, said Macy. Goody, said Pinky. And don't act so scared when I'm around, unless you have something to hide. Pinky narrowed her eyes. Do you have something to hide? No, said Macy quickly. Fantastic, said Pinky, heading for the door. I can't wait to see you. Macy let out a sigh as she continued to clean the counter.